Time now for weather with Nebraska Extension Ag Climatologist and Market Journal Chief Meteorologist Al Dutcher. Al, harvest will be here before we know it. What are you tracking this week?
Well, Troy, since we're not going to be doing a regular forecast this week, I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to give us an update on what maybe CPC is thinking as we go through this fall. And the reason I bring this up is because last month they issued a La Niña alert once again for the development of this event as we go through the fall period. Last month it was basically 65% probability. That's been upped in the latest release that was issued last week to 70%. Now there are some stark differences between this year's La Niña event building and what we went through last year. So I want to give you a brief update and maybe some thoughts of what we might see as we go through this fall and the early winter period. The first thing I'll draw your attention to is last year we had a full-blown La Niña event as we got into the middle of September, and this basically built from the east to the west. Basically, this is just basically a matter of La Niña conditions indicating that you're below normal sea surface conditions along the equatorial region. Look at the Gulf of Alaska, very warm conditions, and we've seen just a slight cooling trend coming off of Southern California into the central equatorial Pacific. Now, as we go into this year, what we're basically looking at is the same type of setup, a little bit more intense warmth just to the south of the Gulf of Alaska, but look over into the eastern equatorial Pacific, well above normal sea surface temperatures. And this broke about as we got into the late portions of December. So really we got what we call, I call a bimodal type pattern, cold in the central, warm in the east. And this is going to be the key issue. If this does turn exceptionally cold, then we're going to lose a lot of the convection and the tropical system activity just off of Mexico, and some of this does make it into the monsoon flow, which has been very aggressive this year. So we'll be watching to see whether the upwelling currents will return in the eastern equatorial Pacific to support an expansion of this below normal sea surface temperatures, which would be a true indication of La Niña-like conditions. Now, if we look underneath the surface, there is a cold pocket that is moving up. Generally, we see this cold pocket come up through the east, and this is coming up through the central and then moving up toward the surface. And I haven't really seen this in my career, so this is kind of unusual. And this basically overwhelmed this big warm pocket that extended all the way from west to east. So this may be temporary, or this may be a sign of things that are going to build as we go through this next few months and intensify as we go into 2022. Time will tell. One of the things that CPC did issue last month with the first La Niña forecast was their fall outlook for above normal temperatures with the most of the heat in the southwestern United States. That's what we would expect during the fall period. Intense high pressure developing over the southwest and below normal precipitation associated with much weaker risks as we move toward the north and the east. Now, one of the things we typically see during La Niña conditions is a warm and dry fall period. But with that eastern equatorial Pacific still warmer than normal, we have the ability to at least get some monsoon moisture continuing up into the Great Basins, and any troughs that are able to move into the Pacific Northwest would work on that monsoonal moisture and carry some of that over into the central and high plains regions. Now, the other thing to watch for is the Gulf of Alaska. The upper air low that typically sits in the Gulf of Alaska is at its weakest point during the summer, and it strengthens as we go through the fall period. So if that area starts to really churn up and get stronger with the cooler sea surface temperatures, we'll likely see much deeper troughs. Deeper troughs kicking in the western United States would allow for much more moisture than the central and northern plains that we've seen last year. So that'll be a thing we'll be looking for, and we'll look for an update as we go into next month to see if these conditions continue to persist.